Hi, and welcome to the Tattooed Teacher podcast, where we get to know the person behind the professional, going below the surface of what we see. Join with me as I talk with some incredible individuals from around Australia and the globe. My guest today is Andres Trujillo. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Andres as much as I do. Hey, well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you're listening to the Tattooed Teacher podcast. Now, on this episode, I have Andres. I'm not going to pronounce his surname because I'm going to screw it up. My Spanglish is okay, but I don't want to offend anyone at this time of year. Look, I've got to laugh on it. He's got a smile on his face. He's got a beautiful moustache to help support Movember. We'll get into that as well. But Andres, how would you introduce yourself? Because I'm not going to give you the LinkedIn bio. I want to know how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, that's mate. Good evening, good morning to everyone out there. That's a really good question to start off. I always say I'm an educator first, and then I tend to follow that up with student advocate, and then followed by my title, which is currently the assistant leader of religious education at Aquinas, so down in southern Sydney, or in the Shire, as we call it, not too far away from Cronulla Beach.
Right, I like how you do that. It's an educator, student advocate, and then your position, which I think is fantastic because from what I pick up from that is that your main focus, your key is student first.
Always student first. And I've had a lot of really good role models in my time as an educator. I started a little bit later. I suppose it's not your traditional path as a teacher. I became a teacher when I was 30. I never wanted to be a teacher. I think our stories will resonate with and correlate and cross over a lot here. And I was only, tapped on the shoulder by a good friend of mine, where she said, "You'd be an excellent teacher and you should give it a crack." And it was just by chance that I ended up doing that, and worked in a great private all-boys school in the Northern Beaches up in Manly. And there's a lot of great staff that were willing to put their hand up and help out, new teachers, new scheme teachers, as they were known, I suppose, back then. And they really took me under their wing, and I got tapped on the shoulder early after my first year, and they put me straight into a pastoral assistant leadership role, which evolved into a year coordinator, which is, I suppose, what most people would recognise it as. And it's always been students first, relationships first, and trying to embody and empower students where, I had the privilege of having a really good art teacher, which I always speak about in my own classes. He helped me a lot, and so I try to do the same thing with my students.
That's fantastic. That there's a few of us who are out there almost, who are almost accidental teachers.
Yeah,
we've come into this amazing vocation, and it's maybe not what we ever expected to do. But once we've stepped foot in it, we're in the door, it's like a light goes on, the switch is flicked, and any other cliche we can think of, but it just resonates with us. So you're talking about student focus and student first, but and you talked about the influence of an art teacher that you had in your school time. So how would you vocalize, or how would you communicate your why behind what you do?
Oh, my why. Like I said, student advocate initially, and I've found I've always been one I gravitate towards, is probably a better way to put it, to the kids that need the most help. And, the naughty boys, been in an all-boys school mainly throughout my career, and normally it's the problematic students that you learn their names first, for example. So my why, as I really found out, and working within a Catholic system as well, really translated well with my values, my personal values, and being Catholic as well, and being in a faith formation, a holistic approach to education. My why was about trying to shape young men, or my students now, in a co-ed setting, to get the best out of them and really give them somebody that can fight for them when they got nobody else to turn to, or they've got their own unique life outside of school, which a lot of teachers tend to forget sometimes. So I always want to be that person in my ways to make sure they all got an opportunity to turn to somebody, have that conversation, and advocate for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you mentioned just earlier, our paths are not too dissimilar, and the way they intersect. And yeah, I've got that soft spot for the, let's say, spirited students in the classroom, and those who challenge, and they're not necessarily challenging out of spite or malice. They're just trying to find out who they are, where they fit in the world, and they're just trying to find where their boundaries are.
Yeah,
They're trying to find that safe space, because, as you mentioned, a lot of teachers forget that these kids have a life outside of school, and often that life is not what you would wish upon anyone.
correct. School's not for everyone. I learned that. My parents were pretty traditional, and coming from a Latino background, they're very, very strict and very conservative. And I'm basically first generation in my family, being Australian born, and my mum and dad came from Spain. Mum came from Chile, South America. They met in Fairfield, out southwest, and as all the Latinos were back then. But it's an interesting place because they want you to get the best education. Education wasn't available to them; it wasn't free, and they had to work for everything. They didn't go to university. I was the first one to go to university, so there's a lot of firsts, and I totally get it. And those kids that come to school, school's not for everyone. And then I realised that I probably took that for granted afterwards. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, and I
Oh
went off
yeah,
the rails and tested the Christian brothers in a school in the city, and told them many things. And I'm paying for that penance now as a teacher, but I think it's definitely put me in the place where I need to be. And I've got to give back now to as much as I gave it to when I was a lot younger.
yeah. Look, I'm the same. It's just like I see. I went to a quite a conservative Christian school in Regent's Park.
Oh, yeah.
So, and we pushed the boundaries. Like there was a few of us, that we, all us lads got together, and there's a couple of the girls as well. Like we pushed boundaries. We wanted to see how far they could stretch before they broke,
Yep.
but again, we were just finding out who we were. We were just trying to work out who we were in the world. We were trying to,
Exactly.
establish our own identity, and I think it's getting harder and harder for kids to find out who they are. Thankfully, there was no digital photography, no cellular technology in the pocket, no
Yeah,
phones capturing stuff. Because I'm sure if there was, I probably wouldn't be a teacher now.
yeah, I've been in
Just
trouble too.
because we just got up to some crazy stuff. Just we're just doing what we're doing, but
Yep.
I think it's harder nowadays for some of these young men and women,
Yeah.
or children, to find that place, because they're so bombarded by
Mm.
outside influence.
Big time, big time. And we talk about globalized world, right? Look at us. We've never physically met, and,
Yeah,
and I know you're up north in beautiful Queensland, and obviously I'm back down in Sydney, and I try to bring that globalization into the classroom as much as I can, and some topics lend to it in religious school, and I teach religious education, and I try and make them understand that there's the bigger picture is out there. Your digital footprint exceeds the Shire, because a lot of them don't leave the Sutherland Shire. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people that probably might be listening, but they're very insular down here in southern Sydney, and they won't cross a bridge, and they tend to stay here. So I don't realise that influence, like you were saying, good or bad, from social
yeah,
media. And we were talking about this prior to jumping online, and unfortunately, young girls and young people, and the Mo, might be a good segue to talk about mental health and the negative impacts it can have on these young people, unfortunately.
yeah. I mean, you say. I mean, November is great, and it's been happening for a long time, and we've got groups like Living, where it ain't weak to speak.
Mm.
There's Beyond Blue, the Headspace. There's so many great organisations out there. There's, I think it's Tradie Mutts.
Yeah.
They have the fluoro, multicoloured high vis shirts. Getting into the construction and building and trade industry, and it's becoming more normalised to actually speak about mental illness.
Mm.
And I guess as a pastoral care leader,
Mm.
you would be having quite a few of those conversations.
Yeah, tremendously. Just before I changed schools earlier this year, I changed halfway through term 2 this year, from an all boys school to a co-ed school now. But the boys school I just left, I've never had such a large amount of young men who have come from broken homes, really tough upbringings. Some of them been driven to school by police, just a little bit lost and seeking a good role model at the end of the day, whether it be male or female, and someone who's going to be consistent in their lives. And, some of those conversations I've had were very confronting for me in the last 2-3 years. And I've been a pastoral coordinator of some kind for the last probably, 12, 13 years. And I thought I'd seen everything, been part of everything. And the last 2-3 years really pushed me personally, professionally, talking to the police at 1:00 in the morning, things like that. So I really learnt a lot about obviously myself, but more importantly about the young men that were under my care and how much I had to give emotionally and physically when I was there at the time. So it almost transcended beyond the physical walls of the school, and coming home and seeing emails from parents, and some of them just go missing. And I think we, as teachers, as all educators, we all care. We don't want to see or hear or anything untoward come to our students that are in our class. So you want to know, are they all right? So you make those phone calls, and I made those phone calls at 1:00 in the morning a couple of times. It was thankfully all good, and they found those boys. But it was tough, very tough. It can be very draining.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people out there who they look at teachers and they look at educators, and they go, oh yeah, you guys are fine. You look after, you babysit for 6 hours a day, and then you get plenty of holidays, and you just life's a cakewalk, and
Yeah.
and you just want to shake them
Yeah.
because and I've noticed, and you've been teaching quite a few years now as well. There has been quite a seismic shift
Mm.
in the need for more pastoral care, mental health services, family services, breakfast clubs,
Yes.
all those sort of things. And I mean, for me, more so probably in the last 5 years, there's been like a massive spike that I've noticed.
Mm.
And I've worked in fortunate to work in some very affluent schools, but you still see it in those as well.
You do. You do. It's almost like I said. I don't know if it's social media is the cause. That's definitely part of it. Obviously, you can talk about COVID as well. I'm sure there's some numbers that correlate with both of those issues. But it's for young women as well, which has always been there. And you look at the data and the Mission Australia surveys, and it's always body image, school, families, and the top 3 or 5, or social media comes in there, sneaks in as a cause. It doesn't give you much solutions, and I'm sure that the young people don't have any solutions either. I don't know if they're aware of it, to be fair.
No, they just make a decision on their feeling at the time, and sometimes they're just plain old dumb decisions, and you just have to laugh at them. Which
Yeah.
is, that's one of the joys of being. It's just like you're a goose. Look, what are you doing? Unfortunately, there's other things that happen which are more permanent and more scarring and more. Um, but do you think that? I mean, I know that I wasn't nearly prepared enough at university, and like I'm talking, I went to I went to university. Not very I was like 26, 27 when I went to university, so
Yeah.
I was a little bit older as well.
Mm.
But I know back then, like I wasn't taught about any mental illness and
No, I
that
wasn't either.
side of things, and I think seeing young teachers coming out there, and I had a chat with Dr. Anne McLeod out at CSU out in Dubbo, and she was saying there's some stuff they're building, that sort of training and awareness into the education course now.
Mm.
But do you think schools could actually do more to equip their staff?
I think so. And just on what you were saying, I think you're right. They definitely need to do it pre-service. You almost become an accidental counsellor, and you may have heard of that term before. And because you might have a student breakdown, they stay behind, and you end up having to chat to them one-on-one, and then they tell you, or then they unload what's happening in their lives, and then you have to listen, and you don't know how that's going to impact you, and that can be draining for young teachers, especially if they're not equipped to deal with it as well. So does that come down to the university's training and equipping the teachers coming in through, or does that fall on the school as well? The more affluent schools are a bit better at it. I've only ever worked at in independent Catholic schools and in Catholic systemic school at the moment for the last few years. There's strategies in place, and you've got counsellors in for the school, and obviously you can talk to people externally if you need to, and then you've got director of wellbeings and so forth. But there's no real explicit model to help deal with difficult scenarios or difficult trainings. And when you reflect on your university, even for me, and I graduated in 2010, and I started teaching in 2010. You remember parts of it, but you don't remember all the theory around it. You're just so focused on trying to pass and do your prac and get in the classroom, and there you go, son, get in there. You're a teacher now.
Yeah, it's the only profession that the first day on the job is going to be the same as the last, pretty much. So
Yes.
yeah, just get in there and do it, and hold on tight.
Everyone's safe. Well, you've done well.
Yeah, it's a tough industry, and it's one that I love. And look, I've got a real heart for young teachers, because I mean we know the stats. Like it's like 50% of teachers are out within the first 3 to 5 years, and I can see why. Like I can understand why, because they come in and they want to do the job, they want to teach kids.
Yeah.
But then there's so much that is put upon them that they're just not ready for. They're just not trained for. We have, and sometimes it's circumstantial. I mean, we're going through this teacher shortage, so someone's got to do the job. Other times it's like they show a glimmer of promise, and so the school just goes, "Yep, we're going to nail you," and just do this and do this and do this, and then all of a sudden they burn out and off they go. And
correct, the admin is huge. We're just joking before that. As soon as we jump off now, I'm going to go back to marking, and I've got 2 classes sitting right in front of me, and I know, like the Sydney Catholic school system that I work for, they've introduced this new policy. It's called the right to disconnect. So they're trying to support all teachers, not just young teachers, to disengage and not reply to emails or try to do too much work at home out of hours. But in reality, you don't have the time throughout the day to sit down and mark, earn your 1 free period if you're a full-time teacher, if you get that. Or if, like I'm a 2-point coordinator, then other things pop up, especially if you're a pastoral leader. So many things that you can't prepare for that happen within a school, because, young people are human beings, and they have emotions and needs as well, and they might have a worst case scenario is suicide at the school, and to something low level to somebody having a panic attack, or just having an argument with their friends on the playground. So you've got to be in and around, and you tend to lose your free time dealing with that. Or students are disengaged, then you work trying to work around the clock how you're going to engage the students that are sitting in front of you. And that could be another issue for the problems in the behaviour in class, and new scheme teachers walking away because they can't engage the new students.
Yeah, and I think they strive for perfection. They want it, and which is great. We want to do a good job, and I think 99% of the teachers out there do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
But they've got to lose this perfection, and that's what I think leads to. Yes, there are times where you have to work outside of hours. That's just the job. You got to get it done. There's deadlines to meet, and sometimes you just do it. But it's the thing that's gotten me through this long in teaching is the right to disconnect. As only we've just got it in up here as well, and it's a relatively new thing. But the thing that has got me through is I did disconnect. Like when I go home, I leave at 4:30 in the afternoon, close my laptop. I don't have email on my phone that's work related, and so because when I'm at home, especially being younger, I had a young family. I wanted to be at home for them. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and so that I had enough energy and enough emotional resilience, I had to close the laptop, because I reckon if I didn't, I would have walked away from the profession that I love. So
well, that's the thing. We're passionate, aren't we? We're not going to give up on those kids that need you most, because you want them to succeed in some way, find something, especially in our subjects. Like I'm teaching religion at the moment, but if we look at visual arts and design tech, they're normally left to center subjects where the students tend to do better, and if they're not traditionally smart in maths, English and science, and they tend to come into art and they can switch off, relax and be creative and still be critical thinkers, but just displayed in another way. And it's so good for them, because they need to know that they can achieve some form of success. It's not all about maths. Unfortunately, not against maths teachers, by the way.
Yeah, no, exactly, and you hit the nail on the head. Is where they come in, and these practical subjects where we're not the standard rows in the classroom facing the whiteboard, chalk and talk, do this exercise and get on with it type of thing. And look, I know that's not all the classrooms, and but as a stereotypical thing, that's what the traditional classroom is. Whereas we are more tactile, we're hands on, we're doing stuff, we're moving around. There's noise, there's distraction. But in order to do our subjects well, the students critically think that, and they don't realise they're doing it.
Correct.
They critically analyse, they evaluate, they make judgment, they do all that, and they're learning a new language. They're learning how to use tools. They're learning how to do all these things, and these skills that everyone talks about, the creative thinking, critical thinking, empathy, they are the heart and soul of our subjects. Yet they're seen as, unfortunately, less than. It's starting to come back a little bit, but they're seen, less than, and it's just like, man, if you only understood that these creative thinking subjects should be elevated, because then the other subjects would just thrive as well.
You always get those questions in class, like, do you get paid the same as a maths teacher? And or like, oh, how can you make money painting? Nobody makes money as an artist. You got to die first, or all that. They go through all those stereotypes, and like, oh, so I'd speak to them and go, look, you really should do art for 11 and 12. Oh, but my parents don't want me to do it, because I'm going to take over the family business, or they want me to do a law degree, or they want me to be a doctor, and that's not going to get me there, and it's not really going to help my ATAR, and kind of like, and then you got to spend the time trying to convert the parents, and that's a difficult conversation to have. And it's kind of true, but then the skill set that you could build up and that resilience that you do in those iterations and failures that you constantly have, and then you come out with this beautiful artwork, this body of work, and then there's something that they're proud of and that they'll have forever, and they'll remember those experiences and those memories with in the class in a more relaxed setting, and it's totally different to the other four subjects. It's going to contribute to your ATAR, and I believe they're going to use those skill sets a lot more often when they get older.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I reckon it's so important that they have a creative outlet that they can, because I think with that, I mean, I know when, for me, when I'm stressed or when I'm just, in my head too much, if I get into my workshop or my art studio and I just create, I just, put my music on, zone everyone out, and I just get in there, it refreshes me. It fills my cup,
Yes.
and then I can go on back and I can do those other things. And I see it with some students that they do our creative subjects or even some of the applied subjects, that are, don't count towards an ATAR or,
Yes.
whatever. But they go and do them because that's where they can just relax and have fun and enjoy themselves.
Correct.
And I think it's important that they have that outlet to. Because everyone we're creative people. It doesn't matter, And if you can see creation, I know, we both chatted with Matthew Green,
Yeah.
and I know he had one guest on who loves math and is just brings creativity into the way he does math, and Matthew said, "Oh, I never saw that before, but now someone has shown me this.
Yeah.
It's there," and I think if we allow the students to be creative in one area, it'll bleed into the other.
Yeah, I agree with that, mate. And I definitely think there's avenue to push that more so in our stage 5 or year 9 and 10 level. Give them more options. I think we're too set in our traditional kind of schooling model, where you get 2 electives and you're stuck in them for year 9 and 10 for 2 years, and by the end of year 9 they already know that I want to do that anymore. And I think that we're talking about disengagement, then why can't we allow them to choose a different subject? Or I know some schools, I'm not sure what you guys are doing up there, but adding those micro credentials, and given that what we do is PBL, project-based learning, and giving them real-world solutions, or make them real-world issues so they can get a real-world solution to it. And those skills, like we're talking about now, they can then use, and we can maybe identify and then give them some badges to go with that, or online or accredited somewhere, or maybe affiliated with, like Matt Esterman has done at OLMC and Parramatta at his old school before he's ventured off now. So there's scope there to be better, and I don't know how it's going to translate eventually into a whole nationwide thing, but I think it's definitely a gap that needs to be addressed earlier, and to empower those students a lot more for everyone's sake, and for the future's sake.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think, and look, I think there's a shift coming. I think, education's changing. There's been a whole bunch of things that are forcing some change in some areas, and there's some great things about school. Like, don't get me wrong, it doesn't need to be broken. I think it just needs to be tweaked. That's for sure. But back to your statement, like, can you make money from art? Well, you know what? A guy just sold a banana taped to a wall for a couple of million, so he proves that you can. So.
I've seen all those memes. I've seen all the local craft breweries, and they've got like a beer can taped to the wall, and it's like, offer me 6.5 for it. Yeah. Yes, yeah, and then you got to explain all that stuff too, right? It's a great way to promote art, and you talk about art, and you challenge people's views. They go, why isn't it art? Why wouldn't you pay 12 million for it?
Yeah,
but I can do that. I said, but you didn't do it first.
No, you didn't do it first, but also you didn't do that. And what a lot of people, in the outside of the art world or art education or design, is they don't realise the body of work that has led up to that.
Correct.
You know, they have done, they've probably worked a whole myriad of things. They didn't just to go, yep, well, I'm going to get a banana and do it, and then that's it. No, because you've got to build a reputation. You've got to build that ability to show those critical thinking, to analyze society. Because so much of art is a judgment on society in some form or another, whether it's a political statement or just your viewpoint that expressed
social
in your
commentary.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at, you even look at the Archibald Prize. I mean, you look at some of those portraits, and you think, yeah, I could probably do better. However, I've never been an entrant into the Archibald, so I'm, but
The armchair critic, yes, yeah.
yeah, they've done what they've needed to do
Yeah.
to get and I guess parallel to that is they've had their journey to get to their success.
Yes.
And I think what a lot of people and teachers and a whole range of societal viewpoints forget that students are on their journey to success. And that's where you and I come in, and so many other teachers that we're trying to go, yeah, you'll get to that banana on the wall, but you've got to travel the journey first. You've got to build up who you are. You've got to work out who you are, and you've got to see the true value in yourself.
Correct. We open the door, and we hope that they walk through it, and then keep going down that tunnel. And eventually, that light of the tunnel will come into something. It'll turn into something. Follow your passions. How many times you hear that, and they just look at you and go, oh, it's a bit cheesy, so.
Yeah,
it is.
Absolutely, it's cheesy, but you'll have fun doing it, and and they're all worried about making the wrong decision.
Yes,
and
we've got to make money. We've got to make money. Got to make money.
Yeah,
it's all about money, money, money.
Yeah, look, money's important, and it does certainly help. That's for sure. I could always do with a little bit more, but it doesn't. It doesn't create that eternal, or that I guess the eternal value, but also that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, correct.
That thing that you have inside where you go, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, that was worthwhile. That was, no one else saw it. No, but I did it and I achieved it, and we got there. So,
and
I mean, I know that's what I try and do to my kids, to try, like the students, my kids, my students, to see the value that they have as a person, as an individual, as a leader in future generations.
Correct. They got to question and not just accept. And I'm happy to answer those questions and try and promote it and use AI, and say, well, is it still art? And I think we might have been talking about it online recently. And you made a post recently?
Yeah.
And agree, if computer makes art, is it still art? I think it is technically, for sure. I don't care who made it. But like I said, I don't know. I'd love to know where the money goes. Who takes credit for it? Then goes, I'll take that $6 million in my pocket, or does that go to the computer? Like at the end of the day.
Yeah. Who's the creative? What's the creative force behind it? What's the, and I guess that's what art is. It's raising the questions. It's like, I've been to some amazing galleries around the world. I've been very fortunate to go into the Louvre, and to just some tiny little galleries in the back of Florence where I saw some amazing Picassos that never see the light of day anywhere else, but they're featured there.
Yeah.
Funniest thing, it's like, people look at value. It's like, what do you place value on? And I've gone to the Louvre. You got to see Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
So I've lined up to see it. This little A4 picture. It's like rather underwhelming.
Not even the real one there, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, but then if you actually step back, go around the crowd, on the back wall of that is this amazing masterpiece, and it's just like, you look at it, everyone is. There's hundreds of people trying to see this picture, but then if you go around the corner, there's 5 people, and you can just absorb some beauty. So it's weird, and that's what we got to.
There's,
I guess.
there's too much art in that place that you need to spend a couple of days or at least a week in there. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
one day is not enough. Yeah, I made that mistake myself. But you're right, entirely correct. It's like the Sistine Chapel, same thing. Everybody's trying to fight over the same, the fingers, trying to add it. We've got trying to get that photo, and there's so many the beautiful, rich tapestries and all capture of human history throughout all of human history, located in one beautiful gallery. So many.
it's a sensory overload. Like you're just
It
walking
is.
through the halls and you don't know
Yeah.
where to look because, like,
No.
even just the architecture as well is just like
Yeah. 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 And it's
magnificent. So
for us, and we're so used to saying, okay, we got computers, but when we went to school, we had textbooks, and you're looking at a tiny little image of a Botticelli's Medusa, whatever it is, or I'm just trying to think. For me, it was Van Gogh, and trying to look at the Impressionists, and you're looking at a tiny little color. If you're lucky, a textbook, or you had a black and white, and then you see it in real life, you're like, holy. That's 2 meters, 3 meters, wide, and or it might be even bigger. You're just like, now I understand why they painted it or what they were trying to capture, and that emotion and that representation or the feeling during that time. And then it just, for me, just captures, made my blood boil, or made me excited. And for me, it was that freedom to get out of reality in that sense and escape school. And my art teacher, like I said, will go back to him. He's the one that drove all that into us, and that passion and being an outlet for us to be free within our class and really understand ourselves a little bit better.
yeah, I mean, one thing I do, like, I try not to go, I regret this, or I have one thing I really wish I had have done back in school was actually go and do visual arts. Like I was very much, I got to make stuff. So I was in
Yeah,
the industrial and doing all that sort of stuff. And so I wish I had done visual arts in class in school, but my passion at that time was elsewhere. But I've grown over the years, and I've always been creative, and I always love to make and do and paint. And my tattoos are expression of.
that's it.
I've got a I've forgotten his name. He's on the back. He's on my calf. He's one of the Italian futurists.
Oh yeah.
And then I've got a this the that one there. I don't know if you can see it. It was an ink gall drawing
Yeah.
of that's Christ on the Emmaus Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw that at the New South Wales gallery, and I thought I was just again captivated by it. And so I thought, I'm just going to get it tattooed on my arm. So,
And why not?
but
Do you have to cover your tattoos at work?
at this school, no.
Okay.
At a couple of schools I've been to, no, I've been able to have the expression. Back the schools that I was at in Sydney, yes, definitely, yeah. You wouldn't know that I had them. But again, they're an expression of who I am, but it's not something that I have to have out on display.
No, that's it.
I prefer to wear a short sleeve shirt, but even when I wear the long sleeve, especially up here on the Gold Coast, like we had winter this year. I think it was Thursday. So
right, we're dying down here to hit 32, 33 today.
yeah, so we so I roll sleeves on, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's that self expression that thankfully these schools allow me just to get out there, and it's a talking point for the kids. And honestly, at one school I had to cover them up when I first moved up here. It was a more conservative school, and the kids were like, "Why have you got all those? Why do you got those sleeves on? Like, we know you got tattoos." So they were more curious about what the tattoos actually were than the kids say, "Oh yeah, you got some tattoos," and they just ignore them.
And that's it. And they're not offensive.
No.
Even though some people claim that they are. Yeah. I've got a Cook Islander kind of pattern. It's got a gecko and a father figure and some turtles on the back of my left calf. So every time we have sport, and I've had to cover at every school I've ever worked at. But I wear like a compression bandage, and like you, the kids come over like, so, oh, you hurt your ankle or you hurt your calf, and then I'll be playing sport, and they go, so you're not injured? I say, no, I'm not. And then they'll see the top of the tattoos sticking out, and they're like, oh, you got a tattoo? And I'm like, yeah, yep, yes, no, I don't, no. So it raises more questions, but I agree. The tattoos are an expression of your inner self and some of your interests and sometimes who you are, and maybe a silly decision.
Yeah, oh, look, I'm sure thankfully I've got none of those. But yeah, there's definitely some silly decisions I've seen walking around. That's for sure.
Oh, big time.
Now, you you're head of religious studies, or
Assistant, yeah.
You're an art teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I can see the correlation.
Yes.
Between, because I mean, you just look throughout history, and we very much look at the Christian faith of, and we've talked about this with the Sistine Chapel and a few other bits and pieces. But then you look at Islamic art, you look at Hindu art, you look at some of the great tapestries from around the world, and you just think, man, like it's like, regardless of your belief system, or even if you don't have one, but art and religion are very intertwined. Like, is that how you see it?
Yeah, it's hard not to associate one without the other, and art history for me was always linked into with religion, even though I was probably not as devout and when I was younger and not that interested. And as I studied further and further through university and becoming a teacher, you can't have one without the other, and it kind of lends itself very easily. And it's good for me, and I like to explain things in class by drawing and linking to maybe using an artwork that was around through a Baroque period or the High Renaissance or whatever it is, and to derive meaning. And stained glass windows in churches when they started building them, a large population being illiterate, and conveying a story of parables through the church and trying to convert early Christian communities. There it is for you, and the kids seem to understand that. They go, oh yeah, it's just like a picture book. It's just on windows, or they painted that, and then the kings and queens had the money, so they commissioned that, and that's what their beliefs, and they used to put it up on the walls, and demonstration of power as well, of course. And yeah, so it's just easier to keep rolling on about what it all signifies and means, and giving context throughout history. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I see the same thing in design as well. That, I mean, we look at so many of the great cathedrals.
Mm.
I mean, I think Gaudi's one is it finished yet?
Close to it, I think.
Close to it. It's like it's taken 700 years to create this building. But then you look at some of the other basilicas, and you look at some of these amazing mosques.
Yes.
I've not been to Turkey, or the Middle East, but I've seen photos, and I've had friends go there, and they just said it's just amazing to see these structures that in today's society you could never build.
No, I agree.
Just the cost, material cost, but labour costs, etc., etc., etc. But you just see that these designers, these artists, these builders, they're all working with this one mission, but every other subject, we were talking about it earlier, how the creative subjects are more pushed to the side, whereas back then that was just when the arts were at their highest, society was moving the fastest.
Yeah,
and I see that.
No, keep going, man.
And I see that I just try and see it in everything. It's like, but then as soon as arts are pushed down, or the creative aspect in any area is pushed down, all of a sudden different parts of society start to break down.
Mate, I'm going to use that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Even if we go back to Leonardo, and he was a polymath, I think is the correct term, and he could do maths, science, art, speak multiple languages, and he was. And during that time period, as culture was rising, everybody was thriving, and he was doing all those things and pushing the boundaries, and obviously inventor, engineer. I think he was doing all those obviously crazy things, that trying to learn how to fly and study the world. It's limitless at the end of the day. And if we're trying to put design there, I think design now is the new frontier, and I think it's got a big place in moving schools forward for sure. It's not art. Art has definitely got a place for it, but I think it needs to work in conjunction with design or design tech or wood, and what are the other subjects I was trying to think, design within that sphere at schools. Because I think we need to work more collaboratively. I think we're too siloed in saying, okay, it's just art and this is design tech or this is woodwork. Why can't we integrate all three things? You see it in movie sets, you see it in the real world. Why can't we cross-pollinate in that sense?
Yeah, and why can't we work to our strengths? Why can't we, use these kids who, if you love math and science, hey, let's just go that way. Let's just drive that. But if you love this side of things, well, let's bring what you need to know into that, and get you to understand and see a purpose. Because I mean, you look at so many things that we do on a daily basis that require math, science. You got the physics. You're building stuff. You've got to make sure that balances and that doesn't push over. You've got, we're mixing paints, so you've got to learn out ratios, and
Yeah,
you've got so much that, if unfortunately, if we could break, we are, like you said, we're siloed. If we could break that down, and I think it's a difficult task. So I mean, it's easy to talk about. I think very, very difficult to do. But if we could, like, how amazing would that be? Because to allow these kids to work to their strength, to get them to
yeah,
their success point, whatever that is, and I don't want to say that make them successful, but get them to their success point, because
and
being
that's it.
successful is different to everyone. So
I agree. I can hear somebody in the background going, "Well, how do we assess them? What outcomes? How are we going to give that a mark? At the end of the day, do we need to give it a mark? Like, that we teach
yeah,
them skill based, and why can't it just be, well, you've done this and you've shown growth, and now reflect, and was it how you envisioned it, or like you planned it and you did your prototypes, and then the other iteration, and you went back and started again. That whole learning process is what it's about.
yeah, yeah. It's a journey to get to there, and they need to create failure points. Like,
Mm,
I'm sure you're the same, but you probably in your room, back at, like, we'll talk into the art room more so, but it's a safe space to fail. Try
yeah,
it. Just have a
yeah,
go, because the worst thing you have to do is we'll get rid of that, or we'll paint over it, or we'll start again. And for me, it's like, well, let's get to, I'll let you go so far, because materials are
yeah,
getting, I don't want you to break machinery, but you know, we'll I'll allow you to fail, so because without failure, there's no learning.
yes, correct. And you got to do it. You can't hold their hand. They got to do it themselves. Go through that and realize where they've gone wrong. Wait for it. I always say to them, in your little visual arts process diary, do not rip any pages out of that. I want to see the mistakes. I want to see how you started and how you end up. Don't rip it out. Don't cross it out. Don't just leave it. Go to the next page. You've got 100 pages there. Just keep going through it. And if they're one of the bigger A3 ones, you've got plenty of space. Don't worry about it. Who
Yeah,
cares? All right. It's not going to be perfect. It never will be perfect. And, they look at me and they go, "So you're so good." I say, "Yeah, but I've been drawing for 40 years of my life or whatever it is, and I still make mistakes. It's just, you guys, it's not going to be perfect the first time. You just understand that and be okay with it."
yeah, and it's just getting them to understand, like, because like, they make product. For me in the design field, they make a product.
Yeah.
I try and give them as much creative freedom as they can. There's certain specifications that they have to work to,
Yeah.
but they're going like, but his is, how do you judge it? How do you do it? I said, well, look, to be honest, I could think your design is complete rubbish, and I could actually really not like what you've done.
Yeah.
However, if you show me your process, That's the important part, because even it's so subjective. I might not like it, but if you've done it well, hey,
Yep.
all power to you. And I mean, I try and, I've said it on with other guests as well. Like, whenever I'm assessing, like, forget grading, throw grading out the window.
Mm.
I don't like to grade. Part of our job, but we got to do it.
We've got to do it, correct.
But I like to like assessing the kids. It's some people might go, well, it's just semantics, but I bring the kids up. I ask them 3 questions. It's like, do you think you could do this before you started? No. Are you proud of what you've completed? Yeah. Are you excited to take it home? Yeah. Then your project is a success.
Correct.
Because you didn't think you could do something, but you've achieved it.
Mm.
You're proud of it, and you're excited to take it home. So
That's it. Spot on. That's exactly right. We do that. I try to do it. Always get them to write an artist statement, and that's exactly the same questions. Outline the process that you went through. What did you find difficult? What was successful? Did you like it at the end of it? Explain why or why not you did like it. And most of the time, that's where I end up. I'll read that first, and then I'll go and then mark the artworks afterwards, and you benchmark and whatever. But and 9 times out of 10, they always get a good work out of it. They get a good product. And more recently, I did the lino cuts with my year 8 class, and we lost a lot of class time. They've changed our timetables down here. They're trying to introduce more music into their timetable, and they call that the Amadeus program. They're trying to use that research between maths and the musical instrument. They say that improves their cognitive ability later in year 9, 10, 11, 12. So they've all got an instrument, but at the detriment of the other Kappa subjects, or the creative and performing arts subjects. So that means we've gone from 5 lessons a cycle to 2 lessons a cycle. Yeah. So which is hard. Yeah. So I see my one class twice in 1 week, and then I won't see him for another fortnight. So to trying to get them build or create something, a little body of work in a term is, and then you might lose a lesson, as exams, or you're sick, or
sports
whatever.
carnival, or
Exactly right. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, guys, we've got 2 weeks left, and I won't see you, so come in at lunch and try and fit this in. And yeah.
And I noticed you shared a post about these lino cuts, and that you used generative AI in them. How did the kids go with that? Well, like, were there, because I've had kids who are just, yep, oh, that's fantastic, but a lot of my art students are going, no, it's terrible. No, I'm not using that. It's cheating. It's doing this. How did you find the attitude towards it?
So I went with a lot of the boys in the class. The girls were really good, and they didn't want to use it because they thought it was cheating like that. The boys were like, I can't draw. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I want to do. And, I'm just going to give up, and it's too hard. So I was like, okay, for those people, and before we even get to that point, and I know you're going to say this, so I'm going to show you how to use Adobe Firefly, and we're going to type in something, describe a cattle dog, for example, and you want a black and white, line drawing, maybe you can play around with the different settings on the side after that, and which we got 4 iterations, and then from there you choose one, and then a lot of the boys jumped on that, and then we used a cropping tool afterwards to try and play around with the composition instead of having the whole head there as a portrait of a dog, a cattle dog. So I said, let's make it more interesting and use negative space around it, and then you just do the cropping tool around it, and they loved it. They bought into it, and it was an easy translation straight into the lino. They just showed the back of the piece of paper after I printed it off for them, and it kind of eliminated all the drawing aspects out of it. So that's where we got those good results, probably more so than if they had to draw that themselves. So I thought it was a great learning tool, easy for them to use and utilize afterwards as well. So it's not just for art, and they've said they use that in TAS, technology and applied sciences, and they've used it for infographics and other assessments that they've used as well now. So I'm hoping that now I've opened the door for them, they can see how it applies in a whole range of things.
Yeah. How are the other teachers towards that? Are they? Is it? Yeah, because I know like certain schools, some are super open to it. Others are nah. That I'm not having a bar. Like I'm just trying to gauge how. Like, did you get much pushback, or have the other teachers come to you afterwards and go, "Why just show the kids this? Now they're using it in my class, and I want them to."
Yeah, I've had a bit of both. Yeah, they said, "Oh, that's really awesome. You got good results too." Oh, now they're using AI in all their assignments, and you told them you could use it. And I was like, "Yeah, what? Well, why not? Why can't we use it? We haven't got a policy that states that we can't." So, and if you're going to give them an assignment, a research task, and they're going to be able to use AI, so I blame that on the teacher and the KLA or the key learning area of the subject that they're doing. So you need to be a bit smarter about it. So they're going to use it. We all know they're going to use it. It's not new anymore. So we just need to be working with them around it and how to. I'm trying to teach them how to use it properly, even in religion. We did the a marketing campaign. I can't remember what it was for. Now to make Jesus great again. I was using Trump as so they had to do an advertising campaign based around Trump and try and make Jesus great again. And it got some interesting results and using AI to develop a whole marketing campaign. So it did a video, transposed, made Jesus talk and with funny accents and things. But using parables from the teachings from the Bible, it was good. They had a bit of fun with it.
Oh,
Once
that's
again,
brilliant.
I could be playing with devil's advocate. I could get into trouble with that, but anyway, the kids seem to enjoy it. They had a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you teach, it's a new tool. That the students are going to use. We allow them to use Grammarly. We allow them to use spell check. We allow them to use a whole range of other tools that are considered AI.
Mhm.
But then all of a sudden, if they're using the generative stuff, it's like, well, no, that breaks on
No,
there.
yeah, correct.
But it's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's no policy.
No,
And most schools don't have a policy. There are some great people who are developing tremendous resources for schools to implement and modify to suit their ecosystem. But it's getting them to train. And as a teacher, if you know your students, you're going to know when they're not using, when it's not their work. I
100%.
had one of my, I had one of my students do his artist statement for the street artwork that we did, and he goes, "Sir, what do you think of this?" And I've just gone, "You didn't write that." He goes, "Yeah, I did." I said, "What does that word mean?" "What is that?" He goes, "Yeah, no, it's I said, "No, look, I get it. You used AI, and look, I appreciate that you're having a crack, but I use it as a scaffold now. I want you to try and understand what it actually says.
Let's unpack
But
it.
but tell me in your words what the artwork means. I don't want to know what AI thinks it means. I want to know
Yeah.
what you think it means." Or
I think that's
and
really
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, well, mate, how can you get AI to write about your artwork that you made? And I was saying, why would you get a computer to write about your artwork? The computer doesn't know what you made or how you painted or drawn the struggles and everything. If you answer the questions, you'll write it yourself. Trust me.
oh yeah,
Okay. All right, sir. All right. Oh, 200 words. Fire out.
and if they had to just use their own words, they would have got it done quicker and better anyway. So.
Yeah. It's more meaningful. You read it straight away. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I really struggled with the drawing component. I really struggled with carving or whatever it is, and that's what you want. That's what you want to see. Bit of honesty.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, look, I appreciate you so much, Andreas, and just the time and the passion that you have for both visual arts, but also your religious studies. For your, it just comes out it's just flooding out of you. The advocacy that you have for your students is just amazing, and I think we could all learn from that 100%. There's so many teachers out there who probably are, but more importantly, you have probably impacted more students than you're going to ever realise by doing what you're doing. So I will thank you on their behalf for what you're doing.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Thank you. You never get to see or hear anything, and you might get an email, maybe if you're lucky, or a weird social media link out and go, "Hey, Mr. Trujillo, good to see you," and I really want to let you know you had a big impact on me. I've had that once or twice in the last few years. So I agree with you, mate. Thank you very much.
No, you're most welcome. Hey, and look, it is a school night, and we both have marking to do. I don't know if I'll get to mine, but I've got kids in exams tomorrow, so I've got a bit more free time in the day. So
Yeah, on holidays next week, you'll be fine.
absolutely. So just a couple of questions just to finish off the night. It's been an amazing conversation. I thank you so much for sharing for sharing what you have. I truly do appreciate it. Um, First question is, what's a challenge that you have for people out there, for other educators or just people in general, whoever's listening?
Asking for help, and not being afraid to go beyond your classroom, and don't be afraid for people to come into your classroom.
Yeah, it's a
As
tough one,
scary as
isn't
that
it?
can be, yeah. I
Yeah,
still get
definitely.
apprehensive. It just happens. You're like, hey, this is my space. Yeah.
But what another that's it is it's funny. Like thankfully I've been in most schools where my classroom it's a revolving door, so I've almost had no choice but
That's it. It's just people just walk in and go, how come it's so messy? It's like, well, isn't it good? It's meant to be messy. It's an art room. Just enjoy it. Get in there. It's great. Can I sit here?
absolutely.
No, you can't. That's full of paint. Don't sit
Yeah,
there.
don't sit there. And then they put their hand down and say,
That's happened. That's happened before. Yeah.
absolutely. Hey, another thing is like we're both creative people. We both have our own belief system as well. But is there a mantra, a verse, a quote that you hold on to that just always resonates with you? It's just something you've got there.
It was. I was lucky enough to be invited to go and see our friends, the Game Changers, so Adriano and Phil Cummins, Adriano Dorado down in Melbourne. Just they got released from their first lockdown, and I caught them in between before they got into the second lockdown. And they introduced me to this quote from, I think it's Clive Parker. It's on my banner on LinkedIn, and it's like, "We teach who we are." And I try to be myself all the time. There's no, I know some teachers walk in and it's like professional. This is professional me, and then I walk out of the classroom and they're a different person. I believe I'm always the same person. I always teach my life experiences, struggles, support, joys, happiness, sorrows, whatever it is, and whatever I can, depending on the student in front of me, of course, and obviously in a child protection lens, so to make sure I'm not giving away too much. But they need to know that I am my authentic self and I care about that person that's in front of me at that time. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh, that's
where
brilliant.
it comes from.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, authenticity is a key to teaching, isn't it?
It is.
Because kids can pick a fake within you got like 15 seconds of walking in the room, and then
They
they
smell it.
know
They know.
it.
So true. Yeah.
Now, one of the other questions is you beat me to the punch earlier as well because we were talking about tattoos. But
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask. And but we talk. You have a tattoo, so could you explain its meaning?
Yeah. So I'll show you the one I'm probably most embarrassed by. And I was 18 and everybody was getting them in the late 90s. So I got one and with a whole bunch of our mates. And that has no meaning at all. And it's probably the one I regret the most. But it's not. I'm not going to get rid of it. It's there. It's on me now. And it took me about 3 months to tell my parents. Um, and then I got I drew a dragon coming out of water. I was very I used to do a lot of martial arts when I was younger, and I was inspired by Bruce Lee. So I got this dragon coming out of water on my left shoulder blade, and totally forgot about it. And I was wearing a singlet in summer, and my parents saw it, and they're like, "What is that? Oh my god!" And yeah, that was a hard one to explain. And then the one on the back of my calf, like I was saying, it was like I grew up with a lot of Maori, Cook Island friends of mine, and through Sydney and my travels, and I really like how their tattoos and artworks have a lot of meaning and towards their family and the symbolism within that. So I've got a gecko embedded within it, which represents my brother, a father figure, a totem that represents my father. There's a whole bunch of turtles that kind of go like circles, ovals with little legs coming off it, and a sun, which represents my mother. So the idea was to one day, when I have my own family, which I have now, to keep continuing on that and expand on that with my girls, my wife, and so on. So that would be an evolving picture. One day when I have a little bit more money and the interest rates maybe come down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and look, like I said to the kids, yeah, tattoos are great, but just make sure they mean something. Like you said, they're going to have meaning to you. It doesn't have to be meaning for everybody else, but make sure they mean something.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and last but certainly not least, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it? I mean, we reached out together. We came into contact through LinkedIn and some
Yeah.
other things, but what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way to reach out if anybody's got any questions regarding religion or art, or maybe both together, and any ideas and collaborations. I'd love to meet up and have a chat. So LinkedIn, you can find me there, or everything else maybe on X, which is slowly dying, it seems like, and potentially now Blue Sky, which is the new one, but which I haven't done too much on. But LinkedIn will be the main one.
All right, I'll throw your profile, a link to your profile in the show notes.
Yeah, appreciate it, Phil. Thank you.
Mate, Andres, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you. Appreciate what you do for your students, and representing Southwest Sydney.
Trying to 100%.
Yeah,
And yeah, I know we went to the same uni, I think, Western Sydney Uni as well. So that's
Yep.
another thing. I'm surprised we didn't cross over other times, but appreciate the time, mate. And hopefully, maybe we can do a interstate collaboration or something. I'm sure we can work something out for next year.
Mate, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun, I reckon.
I reckon
But
too.
mate, if I don't speak to you prior, have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year. Enjoy the time spent. Enjoy those precious moments with your family. And again, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate
Yeah, likewise, mate. And enjoy your birthday tomorrow night.
it. Will do.
All right, Merry Christmas, mate. Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Cheers.
See you, mate.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.